Hello folks, the Y Guy here again. Welcome to my home on this very beautiful summer day. This is going to be a little different video because I'm a very private person and I'm going to expose some things because I feel like I'm supposed to, and I believe it's to encourage and to help others. It's called empathy. So the name of this video is called "The Y Guy is Trying to Be Still." Now, what I mean by being still is that verse that's in the Bible that says, "Be still and know that I am God." You know, after all these long years of my relationship with God, I'm just starting to consider trying this. You know what? Being still, just being still. And you know, my statement has absolutely nothing to do with the philosophy that's out there of being God. You know, all of us, yes, we are one with God because I believe Jesus' prayer was answered, that we would all be one with the Father as He is with the Father. I do believe that. All right. This tape is coming undone here, holding some of my notes. Anyway, but you know, even though that philosophy is out there, I definitely believe that I am in God. But I won't go so far as to say that I am God's, as some do, okay? And so, potato, I suppose, you know, as in meaning the same thing with some people. But it doesn't mean that with me. So I'm just being honest. So let's not even go there. That's not what I'm implying here. With this video referring to the phrase, I am, when I said that be still and know that I am God. I don't believe that was the context of that verse. So when I say that I am God, I am saying I am in God. For me to be still. I suppose you're getting that, okay? You know, as a preteen, my parents once took me to counseling. You know, I'll never forget, all those years ago, you know, I'll never forget how the counselor finally got my parents to admit that they thought that I was the cause to all of their problems, regardless if I was even present in the room or not, or even in the house. You know, because, you know, it had to be true in my parents' mind, considering I was the only child. And I remember it as if it happened yesterday. You know, I was sitting there in that counseling room, office, whatever, because the session was set up. It was designed and set up to solve my problems, you see. Just mine, not my parents. And nothing was learned, you know, during those sessions that I can think of, because no good came from those sessions, because the screaming increased, you know, followed by a little more beating, and the name calling, like my mother, she'd call me son of a bitch. That's pretty ironic, don't you think? And she would call me a bastard, which I was, technically, you know. And son of Satan by my dad, that's also ironic, isn't it? And this guy named R. Dalton, he was a hated relative. You see, so when my dad would call me by that name, and I knew that he hated his guts, you see how that hatred transferred and how I felt like I was being hated equally? You know, the name calling, it never ceased after that, those counseling sessions, and my parents come admitting that they thought that I was the cause to all of the problems, all their problems. And if anything, the name calling, it actually increased as I grew into my teens. You know, I became angrier and angrier, and this resulted in me feeding my parents a reason. Basically a reason, and it justified the way they treated me in their minds. It did. It just became a vicious circle. I ended up becoming what they claimed that I was. Oh, believe me. Oh yeah, I became a real jerk. Okay? And kind of the term that comes to my mind, white trash. Okay? Yet something inside me today tells me that they did their best. And I believe that. I really do. They're both gone now. And do I miss them? Not one little bit. Okay? So, you as a viewer, am I looking for any kind of sympathy? Not one little bit. Not in the least, okay? Because some people have had it far worse than I had. And I'm thinking that this video might help those who have had similar baggage in their lives. And my story will make sense in a moment. Because the reason I do some of these videos and the reason that I'm so outspoken and so opinionated is because I'm constantly asking why. That's why I call myself the why guy. Why do you believe the way you believe? And oftentimes, your view of God and His love is so tainted by the baggage that was put in your lives due to how you were raised, okay? I hope you're catching this. Now here's one last point. I was considerably deprived, of friendship. I was such an effed up kid. Man, socially retarded my wife will testify to that. Why on earth that woman ever married me? I had no social skills whatsoever. So my parents would deprive me of friendship and deprive me of media, i.e. television, which is normal. It's a decent enough punishment, right? It's used as a punishment by my parents, but because I was getting too large, too old to beat. Also, I started to physically fight back. You believe me, I sure did. In the peak of my murderous, suicidal anger, I had an encounter with Christ. I didn't pray. I didn't ask for that encounter. Kind of like the story you read about Apostle Paul. He didn't ask. He wasn't seeking. But boy, was he found. I didn't go forward in some altar call, anything like that. It was very personal. I discovered that in that encounter, I discovered that I wanted to be more like him and less like me. That's for sure. But of course, this desire that I had, it didn't happen overnight. So whenever I did anything wrong during this transitional time, my dad would often, anytime I did anything wrong, my dad would often say, "Did you learn that in church?" Because I started going to church at that time, trying to seek other people who had an encounter with Christ. So when my dad would say that, and that judgmental, he was probably judging himself when I look back. Okay? Because he didn't feel like he was measuring up. So, how the old saying goes, you knock somebody else down to make yourself feel elevated. I believe that's precisely what was going on. But when he would say those things, my mind was so young, and I was so socially retarded, and I was so unable to handle those things, I would go into a rage. And as usual, once again, the police would be called to our home. And when in my city that I lived in, when the police were always waving at me as I was walking to school or whatever, they all knew me. They all knew about me. That was kind of embarrassing. I didn't remember them or recognize them, but boy, they all knew me. For an escape, some of you viewers, some of you that had similar baggage, you would turn to alcohol or comforting sex, drugs, and or music. I didn't do any of those things. None. Didn't even smoke I've never smoked a cigarette in my life, of any kind. And, but instead I turned inward, big time, to my mind. That's where I went. Because I can get lost in there. I still can. Anytime I want. And to this day, my wife will ask me, "Where are you?" Similar to what God asked Adam in the garden. Isn't that interesting? That's a whole other story we could talk about later. So in closing this video, so you see, it's very difficult for me just to be still. To be still and know that I am God. Know that I am God. Very difficult. I blame no one for me being a little rough around the edges, because I am. I'm a little cantankerous. And I know my background had an awful lot to do with that. You know, when I say I don't blame anyone, I'm meaning I own my problems. They're mine now. This is my journey. My past, I don't blame my past. And if I can encourage any of you who are going through some shit in your life, don't blame any past. Just don't. Okay? Do your best not to. Because I do empathize with you. I do. And I understand. I understand a lot more than I've ever expressed on any of my videos before. And I've done hundreds of videos now. But I'm just trying to encourage people with this video to know that there are those of us who do understand and we empathize. You know, I am reaching towards that goal of being still. And that might be some more advice that maybe if you're feeling that little tugging in your heart to reach for that, go for it. Okay, if you're not, just put it aside. Put it on the back burner of your mind, you know. But I'm reaching for that goal of being still and discovering God. And I think we're all doing that in our own journey, all right? So if you're going to leave comments on this video in reference to this video, consider this. If you can encourage a son of a bitch like me, okay, or a bastard, a son of Satan, a person who has been given the name as horrible as this Mr. Dalton character, then you can be an encouragement to anyone. And that's what I'm trying to do for you. I'm trying to encourage you as my viewer. All right? No, I don't. These descriptions that I've given of myself, or I should say it was given to me, they're not who I am. But I'm learning to try to laugh at these things that previously made me angry. And I would also encourage you to do the same. Look me up on Facebook under a group, private group called the Y Guy Group. I ask you 3 questions to join that group. And I go by an avatar name of John Anthony Jones. Like I said, I'm a private guy, so maybe that's what I should name myself instead of the Y Guy, the private guy. Because Jonathan Jones is not my name. When I wrote a book, you can find it on Amazon, called In Defense of God's Love, even my author's name is the Y Guy. My name isn't anywhere on that book because I'm a private person. So sharing this video was somewhat difficult for me, but if it can help even just one of you and encourage you, so be it. Thank you for viewing.